Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to my channel, My Spiritual Butterfly. My name is Gwen Allison. I'm the founder of My Spiritual Butterfly. I'm also a Reiki Master Teacher and a Transformational Life Coach. I'm joined tonight by the lovely Jae. Jae Gibbs is founder of Our True Living. Our Living Tree. Sorry, because you changed it recently. I know. And she's also a women's circle facilitator, amongst other things. As well, I know her and met her really when she sort of helped me with my business. Great sort of strategist, marketing strategist. Yes, but tonight, I mean, obviously Jae will introduce herself as well, but tonight we're going to be talking about African spirituality. It's something I've always been curious about, but know very little about. Perhaps maybe hearing some rumors about it. So it'd be nice tonight to kind of get some truths around African spirituality, as well as dispel any myths around African spirituality. And I think we were both saying, Jae, particularly in light of what's happening today in the States with the presidential elections and things like this, everyone's feeling a little bit kind of unsettled with what's happening. Not everyone, but some people are. I'm not going to say everyone. So it's really, we feel that this is quite poignant, actually, although we hadn't anticipated this at the time when we wanted to talk about African spirituality. It does seem very relevant to bring into this space right now. But yes, welcome, Jae.
Thank you. Yeah, as you were kind of introducing me, I thought, oh, it's been a while since we've been here together having a conversation. So yeah, it's nice to be doing this again.
Yes, we missed it, isn't it? We did miss it. Yeah, and it's amazing how when we just start talking about a topic, it just flows really nicely. So we're like ready to do it. When we're doing all our planning, it just goes. So I've missed you too. I've missed you, and I've missed doing it as well. It's just great. It's lovely to have a place to talk about different things, isn't it?
Yeah.
So really yes, Jae. If anyone wants to comment as we go through, you're welcome to comment. I will be putting up the different sort of questions that I'm posing to Jae. So if anyone joins midway through, they can see kind of where we're at. But you're welcome to put any questions about African spirituality in the comments, or even your own experience of it. You know, we will try to sort of answer any questions that come up, and we will also speak on any comments that come up as well. But yes, Jae, just getting started. I think just to highlight as well, as I said, I've got no experience of African spirituality, but Jae does have. It's something you have as your own private practice, and very, you are very knowledgeable about this topic, although you're just doing it for yourself. But I know you also bring it into your women's circles. So I guess my first question really is to understand what drew you to sort of African spirituality, and what made you decide that it was a thing for you, and to decide to go even deeper.
Yeah, so I want to start. I mentioned this before, but I want to start just by just taking a moment to also honor the ancestors of my lineages as I name them, and that they've been guiding me in this process before I knew they were, and that I know that they live within me and through me. So I just want to take a moment to honor them for guiding me to this moment. And then to say, so my lineages are Afro-Caribbean, from a small island called Montserrat. Some people may not have heard of, most people, and Anglo-British, Anglo-Celtic British are my lineages. So I'm of the African diaspora, and my lineages span, Caribbean, somewhere in West Africa, most likely, or somewhere in Africa, or many places in Africa. Celtic, through the Irish lands, and then English as well. So yeah, a meeting of many lineages, and I'm going to say we all are a meeting of many lineages, ancestral lineages that flow into us, and yeah, I suppose, like you said, I had always been curious but unaware of African spirituality in like system, as a system. I was kind of familiar with, I suppose, different ideas around spiritual practices that originated from Africa. But there was a distance, and there was a distance that was created, which I might go into a bit later on, but there was a distance and a confusion and a fear and many things that and also a decontextualization of the importance and the power of it as well. So I really, my spiritual practice kind of took the form of yoga first. That's where I first kind of inadvertently found a place for me to explore myself. That's where it started. And then as I started to get deeper into that, I started to explore the philosophy of yoga. And that's where I was like, oh, this is kind of matches the beliefs that I hold about me and my understanding of my place in the world, in this kind of oneness, in this understanding, at a very kind of flat level, that we're all connected. And so, yeah, I really, through that process, I just started to deepen my curiosity about spirituality. And then I can't remember the kind of actual point, but I just started getting really curious about practices from Montserrat. Like what did they practice? What was the history of that? What's the history of my lineage? It kind of started there. I just got really curious about wanting to know. And that kind of led me back. So retracing, the triangle really back to the continent, Africa. And I kind of discovered ancestral voices, who I might speak about more later, but that felt like a doorway in. And I discovered this whole world that existed that I didn't know existed. And it really reflected what I was already feeling about the way in which I understood the world. I was beginning to understand the world and each other. And I didn't grow up in any particular I didn't grow up in any religion at all. My parents were kind of, from the Caribbean, English. They were a bit hippie-ish. They were a bit alternative, and my dad had grown up in Christian household and kind of rejected it when he had a choice to. So I didn't have that kind of there wasn't any kind of anything to remove in order for me to kind of step towards this view of the world and this understanding of the world. And I'd also say that as I started to kind of uncover and listen to teachers and practitioners speak about very different lineages of African spirituality, I noticed, oh, that's what my granny does when we go for Sunday dinner, like the pouring of libations. she would always, you know, kind of pour a little rum on the floor before we would eat, or, you know, as we came together. And I just kind of, I didn't think about it. It was just something weird, you know.
Yeah.
And then also, I should say as well, what helped connect that is I worked for Rum Company as well.
Oh, okay.
Rum brand ambassador for Ray and Nephew and stuff. So yeah, that I also then started to uncover the heritage, the spiritual heritage of rum, and how spirit rum is infused into like spiritual practices in Jamaica, particularly. And so all these things, you know, as it does, it's all weaving together. Through at different moments, and then kind of making sense of each other, like making meaning of each other. And you know, like when the elders used to say, "Oh, I've dreamt of fish last night," someone is pregnant, or you know, just all these things that I just used to think are superstition. But when we think of Yemoja, of the Ifa Orisha tradition, Yemoja is the mother of the fishes, of you know, the ocean, the rivers in Nigeria, but then as moving into the diaspora, became like the mother of the fishes of the ocean, and is, you know, said to have carried with the people and protected the people that made it to the new, you know, the so-called new world, and then stayed and carried the practices with them. So these things, these kind of weird things that were a bit like a bit embarrassing or a bit extra, you know, like the wailing at the graveside at a funeral, just be like, why, you know, what is this? But you know, it's an expression of grief. That's like a tangible expression of grief. So these kind of practices were just a little bit weird, but I didn't have the context for them. I didn't understand how actually these practices are part of being connected to spirit and being connected to your own healing, your own empowerment. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I think many of us can said that the dropping of the rum, and it's interesting that it is called spirit. The rum, the alcohol is called spirit. I think, where's that coming from? But the little dropping of the rum, usually, you know, when someone's passed away, you know, there's a little bit for them as well. But definitely, I still have friends like that now who say, "Oh, you dreamt of this. That means that you dreamt of fish." You know, so it's interesting.
Or the herbal teas. Oh, you're feeling like this. Drink this fruit. Drink, you know. This is all part of the practices. You know, this comes from wisdom, ancestral wisdom.
It's interesting. Lovely. Thank you. So I guess it's to kind of go a little bit deeper into understanding what African spirituality is. It was nice to hear how you kind of came across it. And it's interesting, you said as well, initially it was all kind of like, seemed really weird and what they're doing, and there was a disconnect between everything that was happening. But what is just letting us know, really, just telling us what African spirituality is.
Yeah, just on that point as well, it wasn't just what I observed in my family, it's also the messages I was receiving through the media. You know, I remember watching Live and Let Die, James Bond film, right? I loved it because it was set in some vague Caribbean country, and it was like, oh, this, you know, but there was like voodoo, like a very particular expression, you know, portrayal of they didn't name it as voodoo, but you know, that kind of thing of sticking pins in dolls and things like that. Wow. And so it was like, it was portrayed also as dangerous, scary, you know, even vindictive or something like that. So there would be a reason to like just be wary or keep it at a
Yeah.
distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I was holding all of that as well, and I think it's through the parallels that I saw with other spiritual systems where I was like, oh no, this is they're talking about the same thing. They actually this is going back to the root of the same thing. So I just say that
Yeah.
because as you said it just came up for me.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
But yeah, to say, what do I want to say here? Yeah, so African spirituality, to say actually, that's like a grouping. That's like an overarching name for something, because yeah, every group of people have their own spiritual system, right? And I can't remember how many different people. I've got it written somewhere how yeah, so like there's practitioners in traditional religions or spiritual systems across 43 countries in Africa, right? And those are 43 countries that have been kind of created as well. So we're not talking about those are not 43 different sets of people or groups or traditions of people. That will be multiple, much more than that. And there's like 100, it's estimated 100 million practitioners of traditional spiritual practices in Africa. Although what I would say is predominantly what is practiced is Christianity or is Islam.
Yeah.
So people are predominantly that, but what they do is attach their own, they mix it with their own spiritual practices, right? So to say that there's no one thing or one way or one tradition, but there is some kind of unifying principles around it, and I kind of identify those as like oneness. So this idea that we are not separate from anything, that in fact we are it. We are that. I am you. I am this plant here. I am the chair. I am part of an energetic web that is visible and invisible. That I can touch and see, but I can also sense and not touch and not see. And that is the world. So the visible and the invisible live alongside, exist alongside, and they relate to each other in constant relationship.
Yeah. The I am is very common in a lot of, I guess, religions, philosophies, the great I am. So it's just interesting that you say that I am the plant, I am the chair, I am everything. That's a fundamental basis for a lot of spiritual practices. So it's really interesting to hear that.
There's a mantra in yogic practice that says I am that, I am that. And you meditate on that essentially, and it is the same. And it's don't want to forget, because I do have a little quote here that I wanted to share, which I think really which is from Credo Matwa, who was a Zulu Sangoma, is now an ancestor. And I've taken this from Ancestral Voices Spirit is Eternal book. But he says, the bee is in me, the bird is in me, the fish is in me, I am the fish. In other words, life is one. It is wrong to separate different faces of God because, as we say in Zulu, God is one. Even on the furthest ends of creation, God is one. He or she is many things, just as the earth is many things. The earth is the tree, the earth is the rock, the earth is the water. So is God, and so is the human being.
I love that. Just really resonates, doesn't it? just really resonates.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's no separation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That quote for me just kind of really represents the view, the African spiritual view of the world, that fundamentally that we are all spirit, and that we cannot be separated from each other. And it's actually our misidentification that we are separate is what's causing this feeling of separateness, of emptiness, of being lost. You know, you mentioned what day we're on, like the US presidential election, and just sensing a real feeling of separateness, of fragmentation, of polarization. And this is why this feels like such a resonant conversation to be having today, because actually the practice of African spiritual systems is to come back to know that you are one.
Yes.
You are part of the one whole. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Jae, I just want to share, we've got a comment from Mel. I'm just going to put it up there. New to the channel. Hi, Mel. Hope you're still watching. Just fascinating. I've not done a DNA test, but I know I have Maori chief blood. We all over our dead. We way over our dead. Yeah. Very similar practices between our cultures.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she's asking another question. We haven't quite finished what African spirituality is yet. She's saying, what are the thoughts of the Ethiopian religion?
We can get to that. Yeah. Oh, good question. Yeah, and thank you for bringing your lineage in and sharing that. And I was going to speak about this later, but indigeneity is so important. So we're speaking about African spirituality today, but I've also been exploring Celtic, pagan, indigenous spirituality and systems around that. And that predates, Christianity, organized religion. And there are similar concepts, similar understanding of the world, that we are not separate. So that kind of brings me to the next kind of element of African spirituality, which is nature, that we are nature itself, and that there are natural, universal, elemental forces always present, always at play. And we are that, And we might think of them as air and fire and water and earth as the elemental forces. And in Ifa, Orisha tradition, you have the Orishas, which I call elemental forces or essences, but they might be, similar to the Neteru in Kemet. And Kemet is ancient Egypt, and the gods and goddesses, that were celebrated, worshipped, part of that spiritual system. I have Isis tattooed
lovely.
On my arm. And also the deities, there's many systems around the world that have deities, and these kind of energetic essences that have been personified so that we can understand them as a reflection of the essences, the energies that move through us also, and that also move through nature. So the wind Oya is the Orisha of the winds and the storms, and Oshun is the Orisha of the sweet waters. And I mentioned Yemaja, the mother of the fishes of the ocean. So these ways of understanding the energetic forces that move through the world, the unseen forces.
Yeah, it's so, as you've said that, it's reminded me of the fact that obviously, yes, we've mentioned the Celtic traditions. Obviously, this is we're talking about the African spirituality right now, and then Mel's mentioned the Maoris as well. Obviously, the indigenous people, the first people of America, and then even with obviously, I'm with the Reiki side of me, the Japanese have Shintoism, which is all about that. They have gods of the same thing, the elements, the wind, and like the rain and the sun and the mountains. Everything is what they call kemi, a god, a spirit, an energy. So as you said that, I'm realizing, particularly these I guess cultures that have been around for thousands of years, and even the Ayurvedic culture, and where there's many, the elements are represented as spirit and something to respect, and to it's all one, and we need to treat that with some reverence.
Yes, you have the doshas in Ayurvedic, the Ayurvedic system, which is a combination, that's how they identify like your constitution, to understand, are you wet and dry? I can't remember exactly how you describe them, but it's a way of understanding the world, as with traditional Chinese medicine. And I just want to say the Maori are the indigenous people of what's now called New Zealand. And so this really does, like, I don't know this for a fact, so I'm being everywhere in the world, but I believe everywhere in the world you could go, you will find an indigenous spiritual practice and understanding of the world, because we are human as well. We have been on age-long quest to understand who we are, what our nature is, what is this existence that we're in, and what has been predominant more recently is science, and that's been where the weight has been put, or the validation, etc., has been put. But now science is actually, interestingly, starting to actually recognize, these spiritual systems, there is something here, there is something here. And we can speak about that a little bit when we get into somatics as well. But I feel like, I'm going this, because it's such a web.
I can imagine it is.
It's such a web. There's so many places to go. It's so interlinked. Mel says I have the eye of Horus. Yeah, on my back. There you go. So this is the interweaving, right?
Thanks, Mel.
So then, nature is really fundamental. We are part of nature. We are not separate to nature. We're not higher than nature. We are an expression of nature. That is an expression of the oneness. So this idea that we can separate, or that we're in some way superior to animals or to plant life, we don't understand. We're at the tip of the iceberg of understanding how animals and plant life communicate. And I think humans in our toddlership, I'm going to say, I really feel like we're in our toddlership at the moment. There's a lot of tantrum throwing, right? That's been very harmful and dangerous. But we really don't understand anything at the moment. And I think we are actually being called collectively to deepen our understanding and connection in a big way. But to say that, you know, there's herbal medicine, which we kind of mentioned with the
Yeah.
teas and things like that. And then there's also the divination, which ties into the elemental forces in some of the African spirituality practices, the divination through the Orisha or through these elemental forces. So a way also to connect, a way also to access or to contact spirit. So yeah, wow. There's so much. There's so
There is
much.
a lot.
And yeah, and then the fundamental thing, which probably should have come first, but I needed to contextualize,
Yeah.
is ancestral veneration. And how that's fundamental, because without the ancestors, we are not here. Literally, the ancestors are within me. If I go back 7 generations in my direct lineages, so you know, I have my parents, they have their parents, so it splits from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64 to 128. So 7 generations back, there are 128 people that are in my direct, you know, that are directly linked to me, and that's just 7 generations. That also says that what they experienced in some way is within me too. And when we talk about the diaspora and what has happened, that this is why this is really important work to do. This is really important to connect with, because in behavioral ways, there would have been things passed down, but also there's a lot of work now to understand, you know, how it's been passed down through DNA.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's evolving. And so I'm not even going to touch on that, but just to say that we are our ancestors. And so, you know, what's popping up for me now is Sankofa, which you may have heard of as a term, which comes from the Akan people, who are mainly in the area of Ghana now. And Sankofa is reaching back to know how to be in the present, right? So that we can shape our future. And so the reaching back is to learn your lineage, learn where you've come from, learn what you hold in your lineage. And you know, if there's healing or there's unfinished work, to come into a spiritual kind of connection with that. And also just to hold them in can't think of a word now, but yeah, to hold them as high, you know,
In reverence. Yeah.
in reverence. Thank you, in
Yeah.
reverence, because whatever has happened, you are here directly because of them. You did not arrive alone.
No.
You cannot get here on your own. That is the nature of being a living, breathing human being. So to start to connect with that is like bringing some more wholeness into your understanding. And also, it's the way you can start to begin to understand how you might be connected to everything.
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes that concept can be challenging for people as well. That's often a question that comes up. Well, how might I begin? I can rationalize it, but how do I feel that? And an exploration with your own ancestry and your own lineages would be a way to maybe begin that.
How did you find out about your ancestors and your lineage?
Well, I have to say, you know, I only know back to my great grandmothers on either
Okay.
side
Mm.
in terms of names,
Mm.
and placing people. And that's
Mm.
my great grandmothers, not great grandfathers. So I
Mm.
don't know. That's on both
Mm.
sides.
Mm.
Um, but for me, it's an essence, it's a connection. It's, as we would meditate on many things, you can meditate on your ancestors. You can call them in. I call
Mm.
them in. Um, you know, the well, the willing, the wise ancestors come through,
Mm.
and so much has come through that. And as I said at the beginning, they've been guiding me before I know it.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
yeah, so there are practices by which to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I might, yeah, see if there's time, maybe give some pointers on that. But
Mm.
one thing I do have is a altar to my
Yeah.
you know, to the ancestors that I know, and I
Mm.
have their pictures on the altar. And
Mm-hmm.
then I also have symbolic things of, for the ones that I don't know. You know,
Okay.
I have a stone from Montserrat. I have, you know, so
Mm.
it's like, how do I can find roots of connection
Yeah.
back to them, and
Wonderful.
roots of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Jay. And so,
Mm.
just having a look now at the spiritual practices, obviously we're
Mm.
not sharing detail, but just giving us an idea. I think you've mentioned one or two of them, but are there any sort of spiritual practices that you found particularly empowering
Mm.
within African spirituality?
Yeah.
And are there any special days of remembrance or celebration or honoring
Mm.
that happen maybe annually and things like that, or
Mm.
monthly?
Yeah. So to say, let me say, because I didn't say at the beginning, I'm not initiated into any one tradition.
Okay. Okay.
So initiation is also part of practice. If
Mm-hmm.
you start to deepen
Mm-hmm.
into a specific lineage, a
Mm.
specific spiritual system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not initiated. So what
Mm-hmm.
has been passed to me has been through initiated people, though.
Mm-hmm.
So on the whole, and then I've also, just as I've been practicing more and more and trusted myself spiritually, and kind of developed a bit of spiritual maturity, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Still, that's
Mm-hmm.
an ongoing thing, so I'm not professing to be
Okay.
there, but
Mm-hmm.
then I've started to trust myself with my intuition,
Okay.
what kind of practices come up. Like
Mm.
today, I went, like, it was getting a little bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I made the mistake of going online and checking the results, and then stayed on a bit too long, you
Yeah.
know, for the responses.
Hard to
And
avoid.
really, it almost impossible.
Mm.
Because I did also want to know. I did want
Yeah.
to know the result.
Exactly.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is the reality we're living in. So,
Yeah.
but what I did, I felt that kind of rising, you know, anxiety or
Mm.
feeling of dread, or, you know,
Mm.
and so I took myself outside. I went and stood on the grass for a
Mm.
while. I let myself breathe there. I let myself listen to the birds. I let myself listen to the life around me,
Yeah.
um, and felt my feet on the floor.
Mm.
So, and felt the dew in the grass, the cold dew in the grass. Like, where does the dew come from? It
Mm.
hasn't rained. So you know, there's all these like mysteries and
Of life.
curiosities and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Mm-hmm.
allow yourself to open up again
Mm.
to that, there's so much ore available,
Mm.
which then can balance. And oh, Mel's saying that she's having to head off. The grass is so grounding. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Mel.
Thank you,
I know
Mel.
I'm try and get to your question before the end if you want to join me on the recording. So there's a practice there which maybe also be shared as a somatic practice. So there's a practice to connect back with nature. Another thing that I've taken to doing, not so much now that I've cut my hair off because I've got less hair, but when I had more hair, you know, there's always the dead hair that kind of, after I wash it, I just have loads of hair left over. And so I will burn that. I will burn that and release and burn it with an intention. So anything spiritual has to be with intention. And you will know this through your own practices as well.
Absolutely.
So it really is about the intention that you put on the energy that you're releasing or calling in or moving, right? So it's the same principles as that.
And I guess, I was going to say with the hair burning or whatever, I guess that's a kind of freeing, although it's coming out in the wash or whether you decide to cut it, it's almost like a liberation thing, isn't it? It's almost like getting rid of the old and allowing new to come in, and all the energy that's trapped maybe in that older hair or dead hair. And so it can be quite common for people to do that even without acknowledging that or knowing it's a spiritual practice. They just feel some freedom in releasing any attachment to their hair and letting that go. Feeling a lot lighter.
But the spiritual practice of that, so then you have ash. So you burn it and then you have ash. What do you do with the ash? You give it back to the earth. Give it back to the earth to regenerate. So it's these intentions, and emails also saying Maoris burn hair too. So this is not necessarily an African spiritual practice that was passed to me. This is something intuitively that I've moved towards with my understanding of energy and how it moves. So so there's that. There's also like your creative expression is also a practice. And I was saying earlier, you know, what would we do if we gathered at the fire in the village? What would we do as we gathered as the village? We tell stories. We grieve together. We sing. We release. We dance. We move our bodies. We still do that now today. You know, people go dancing and, you know, and sing at concerts and things, but it's decontextualized from the spiritual meaning of it, from the spiritual power of it. So it's really just about infusing the spiritual power, the spiritual intention back into some of the practices that we might not be understanding as practice.
I think with the gathering around the fire, immediately I'm getting the image of the grandparents being there as well, and so that's something that can be missing in our modern world. And they are revered, they're honored, they're wise, and they're passing down through the storytelling. I'm imagining the history. As well as educating the children and you know, passing down that wisdom and guidance. It's
intergenerational, isn't it? And you know, there's not a kind of priority put on any part of life. Like all of our life is important. Like the energy of youth, right? The innocence of youth is also like really powerful. So it's like it's intergenerational, most definitely, and back, you know, and also into the future as well, the ones that are not here yet. So it's in that sense, you know, time is different and place is different, because in the invisible world everything moves differently.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the days, right? Because there's different, I can't remember now, I didn't have a chance to check, but the Yoruba, I think, have a different way of organizing the week of the days. So it's like,
Okay.
I think it runs on 4-day cycles.
Okay.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it's definitely, it's 7-day week is something
Mm,
that, is relatively new as well. Even the
mm,
24-hour clock,
mm.
the unified 24-hour clock is relatively
Yeah.
new concept.
Yeah. Industrial age.
Yes.
Getting people to the factories on
Exactly.
time and all of that. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
there are many different, like we've been born into these systems
Mm,
and structures, but
mm,
this is not the only way to live.
mm,
There is not a right and wrong.
mm-hmm.
And that's what I would say with African spirituality, as with lots of indigenous spiritualities. It's not the either or. The
Mm-hmm.
perspective on the world is not either or. It's both
Mm-hmm.
and. Like
Mm-hmm.
more than one thing is true at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and that frees a lot of things.
Mm,
That frees so many. For me personally, it has really challenged my perfectionism
mm,
that I was holding. Call myself a recovering perfectionist because
mm-hmm.
that was not helpful to me. So there's these concepts that we can also free ourselves from, because they are not the only, it's one way of being, it's not the only way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going off in tangents, but
Well,
yeah,
we're
to
talking about
say
special days. Yeah.
special days.
Yeah.
So there's many different ways to organize time,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
to measure time, or to be with time. So just say that. And then so this year I finally made it to the Oshun River Festival,
Lovely.
which is led by Ya Asantewa, who is a practitioner. I've forgotten of. I think they are from Guyana
Okay.
originally.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the practices, the lineage of that place,
Mm.
of birth. And Oshun is Orisha from the Yoruba people, the Ifa tradition, the Ifa spiritual system of the Yoruba people.
Mm-hmm.
And Oshun is the mother of the sweet waters. So we go to the and I've forgotten, it's in August. Forgive me, people, for not being on point. I think it's the 8th, but I also know it's Jamaican independence on the 6th. So I get like,
So they're close.
you know,
Very close.
too many dates, but I think it was the
Mm.
8th. And you go to the river and you make offerings. And there were a lot of people there, there were a lot of
Mm.
people there to give offerings, to honor Oshun, to connect with the indigenous spiritual systems,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and their indigenous spiritual body, if you like. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we say we're all one body, if we're all one, then we're
Yeah.
all one body. So
Yeah.
that there's a way to connect back to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are dates like that in all different traditions. And I
Mm.
would say my own practice, that was a ritual that was passed to me, that I do for the ancestors, I do on a new moon,
Okay.
because that's the kind of thinning of the veil. It's
Mm.
a reset
Mm-hmm.
moment, and a time to set intention.
Yeah.
So so there's a ritual that I do around the new moon, and then maybe I might amplify it at the full moon,
Yeah.
or release it at the full moon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So so there's different days for different traditions. So there's so many different
Mm-hmm.
ones, but that's
Well,
how I
yeah.
shape. Yeah.
Mel is saying she's another perfectionist here. A burden at times.
Absolute burden, yeah. And also there is no perfect. There is no way to be other than who you are. And how do you know who you are? I would say through exploring what spirit, how spirit lives through you, in you, through you, how it expresses through you. That's the way to get back to that. In Ifa, they call it Ori, which is your essence, your true essence, how that manifests. Yeah.
I love that. And I think when you get to that, you probably, perfectionists usually we're worried about being judged and wanting to get things just right. And so when you connect with that inner self that you just mentioned there, then there's no desire for that anymore. No one else to please or needing to validate you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, and you can move as you are with trust. I think, there's something about the structures that we're living in that fundamentally move you away from trusting your own intuition, your own wisdom. So when you connect back to ancestral wisdom, when you know that you're part of something, not part of, you are something bigger, beyond what this physical body is, you literally are more than that. You start to trust yourself in a different way. And you move in a different way. And I think one thing I missed off, the unifying principles that I wanted to bring in actually while I remember is the embodiment. It's the embodiment of spirit. And that is, through the technologies of dance, through the technologies of song. Like if you sing Oriki from the Orisha tradition, you're singing the Orisha. So you're actually in singing, you're actually personifying, embodying the Orisha, that essence, that energy through the song. And that shows up as, when you sing mantra in yogic tradition and like that. So, and you might, I know that there is in Reiki, there are chants that you sing. And
for the Reiki symbols, the spirit word of the symbol. Exactly the same thing.
The manifestation of spirit in that form. So there's so many ways to do that, and the drum is definitely one. The drum, and so one from Montserrat, which is not unique to Montserrat, but what they call it is the Jambi dance in Montserrat, which is like spirit possession, right? It's like it literally becoming the spirit of whatever essence you're calling in, or the ancestor, or whatever. Literally becoming that. And they call it Jambi. Jambi is the spirit, the ghost.
That's amazing. The drum is just so powerful in terms of animating the heartbeat, and so it starts to calm us down and ground us, and it can get slower, which relaxes us even more. And then I can imagine if that's combined with the storytelling, we're learning and understanding something, it goes a lot deeper. But the drum is again in many indigenous sort of cultures, and it's fabulous.
Really healing technologies. They really are healing technologies, all available to us. So there's a question there of why. Maybe we'll get onto this, but why is it hidden? Why is there shame and fear around it if these are things that are accessible to us and are so powerful and can heal us and empower us? So,
Absolutely. Okay, we're just going to thank you for that, Jae. We're just going to look at this now, because this is a question that intrigued me in terms of we have Black people in the Caribbean obviously came from Africa, and they practice maybe their own form of spirituality. And then we still have the indigenous peoples of Africa practicing theirs. And I just wondered if there were any links between the two, any sort of commonalities, or anything to kind of speak of about around that.
Yeah,
Does
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, is the answer. And I've got some notes because it's extensive, and I'm not always great at remembering like stats, but so it's estimated. Okay, so let me start here. African spiritual traditions were carried with the people that were taken to the New World. Let's say, So those traditions, those people, that our ancestors did not lose those practices, but they were they weren't permitted to be practiced. And with the movement of colonization also came Christianity, or the Western European version of Christianity, let's say, to Mel's point, which I might be able to touch on a little bit. It's not my area at all, but I might have something to say. We'll see. So the practices, the understanding of the world traveled with the people. And so the practices that you'll see across the Caribbean, in South America, wherever African enslavement took place, are essentially the root of that. Goes back to African practice. And the most known, or the most common, would be Ifa, Orisha tradition. And it's estimated that around 75 million people practice some form of Ifa tradition around the world. Or throughout the diaspora, some version. So that would be like Vodun in Haiti. It's not voodoo. That's incorrect.
Very close. I was thinking that.
No, it is. It is, but that is an incorrect pronunciation.
Okay.
And also, it has a particular connotations to it. But that was part of the way it was pushed underground, how it was forbidden. So Vodun, I hope I'm saying it right, in Haiti, which was essentially preserved by mixing with Catholicism and merging the Orisha with Catholic saints. So they could hide from, the ruling classes. Hide from those people and still practice, and still bring the power of that practice. You have Santeria, which is similar. So it's a kind of syncretized version of Ifa. And then you have Lukumi. They're both practiced in Cuba, and Lukumi is not syncretized. That is Orisha practice. That stems back. You have Candomblé in Brazil. You have Shango Baptiste in Trinidad. And then you have like a mix of different practices. Hoodoo in the US, which I believe is also from it's a mix of the African and the indigenous and the Creole practices blended together. And then in Jamaica, you have Obia, which is more thought to come from Ghanaian, what was, the original Ashanti or Akan practices, and there's a practice of Mayal, or I might not be saying it right, but Mayal, which is basically Christian revivalism mixed with Obia. So the same thing, like ways to kind of mask the traditional practices with the colonial practices, so that they could continue to do that with less interruption, right? With more control. So and that's just the ones I've mentioned. Those are the ones I know of, and there's maybe on the other islands there's different versions, you know, like I said, in Montserrat, the Jumbi dance goes back, like the roots of that go back to Africa. So each place will have its own version, which would have been practiced by the African people there.
Yeah. So as you've mentioned it, perhaps we should talk about the Vodun and the Obia, because, you know, me growing up, I saw those two things as the negative side of whatever was happening there, this kind of practice. And definitely, you mentioned it right at the beginning, there were certain things that kind of made you a little bit kind of weary of going head on into it until you knew a little bit more. So are you able to speak on those practices a little bit, just to allay any kind of misconceptions and just clarify where African spirituality really is, if it's separate from all of that, and in terms of the
so everything, as I said, the root goes back to Africa. The way in which it's practiced, if it's decontextualized, as I said before, if it's removed from the spiritual intention by which it's created, it can be used negatively. And for me, my understanding, this is not my direct experience, but how I would think about it, is that in the lineages are handed down from teacher, from Babylao, from priest, or however they are named, Sangoma. It's handed down. So it's not people just picking up something that they've seen on the internet or something that's being passed. And in the handing down, in the teaching, there is time, there is initiation, as I said, and there are phases, there are things that must be done, and there's an awareness that must be had, there's a wisdom that must be gained before you can be in a place where you can offer divination or herbal medicine or teachings to anyone else. If that is not followed fully, then things can go awry and be misused, I would say. But that is not the nature of the practice. That's a misuse of the practice. When the integrity of the line and the teaching is held, the practice is about healing, empowerment, unity. So I think that's what I would just say on that, because there are some misuses, there are some things that happen around that.
And that's not unique to African spirituality, is it, really, where people will their ego takes over, and their intentions are not pure, and therefore it no longer is African spirituality then, if it becomes
the
something
tradition
else
that it's from. And I'm glad you said that, because it does happen in other traditions, but I
Yeah.
think because of the propaganda around African spirituality, it's almost easier to believe the things, you know, it's easier. Oh, that, you know, the woman down there does
Yeah.
whatever. And then it
Yeah.
just reinforces what you're already being fed,
Yes. Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
so I would really, encourage people to be curious and to feel into their own intuition with it and to seek out people who have, you know, who are holding the practices, holding the systems with integrity.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
It's very similar, even in, although Reiki isn't a religion, it can be a spiritual practice as well as, you know, teaching this for the healing side. And it's very common, even in that space, to have a student come to me saying that they learned from someone and they didn't give them a manual, just a one pager. They just spent a couple of hours showing them something. So that integrity has completely been compromised there as well. So yeah, it's very common that it happens. So it isn't the nature of the practice, as you
Yeah,
say. It's
yeah,
the people.
yeah,
The
yeah,
people that.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay,
And I
thank you for
think, and I would say as well, when you push something underground,
that.
it's easier for that, you know, for that to happen because there's no
Yeah.
regulation, right?
Yes.
And I'm not asking for regulation at all
No,
because
no,
I
no, no.
think also that is a Western thing. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm just saying that it can get muddy,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people don't
That makes
know
sense.
where to go. People don't know. There's, you know, you have to trust your instincts and your
Yeah.
intuition. But
Yeah.
I would say, you know, there are so many people. If someone contacts you, this is a good rule of thumb.
Mm.
If someone
Mm.
contacts you, DMs you or whatever, and says, "Oh, I've seen something that you need to know," or something,
Mm.
they're not a practitioner.
Mm.
They're not an authentic practitioner.
No.
They would not contact you.
Yeah.
Um, they don't need to. Like
Yeah.
people seek them
Come to
out,
them.
and and
Hmm.
and and it's there's ethics. You know, there's
Mm.
something about people come when they're ready to
Yeah.
receive,
Yeah.
and so yeah, there's ways of understanding
Mm.
who, but I would say, yeah, do some of your own work,
Yeah.
like really research, like
Mm.
to understand also where your alignments are, where you're
Yeah.
drawn to. Follow your own
Yeah.
intuition.
Makes complete sense. Thank you.
Mm.
This one we've kind of talked about a little bit. Specific deities we've talked about a fair bit actually,
Yeah,
because you've mentioned quite a few the deities, spirits, archetypes.
I, c- I
But
can touch on this a little very quickly in
yeah,
saying that yes, there is a particular Orisha that I've been courting for the last 4 or 5 years.
I like that. Cool.
Oshun.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I hold it, you know. It's
Mm,
not an assumption
mm,
that she wants me, you know. And also in the tradition, in the spiritual system of
mm,
Ifa, you are given a head. Your head is like the Orisha that um, that lives that you honor, that lives through you, that walks through
mm,
you. And so yeah, it's there is, yeah, you practice with respect, practice
yeah.
with integrity.
Mm,
Don't share something you don't know about. So this is
yeah.
why, you know, I'm sharing purely from my own experience
Mm-hmm,
because it's been so powerful for me.
mm,
Um, and in my own growth and understanding and acceptance of my true essence
yeah.
that is continuing to unfold. So
Mm-hmm,
but Oshun has been part of that process importing her. She is the the divine absolute spirit of love. She's many forms, but over time, like, I've received signs, messages, that she, receives me, and and yeah, I found connecting with her to be very healing for my own journey, my own growth. And so yeah, there are you might be drawn to something. I was particularly drawn to her, and recently I had a astrological chart reading as part of a thing that I was doing, a group kind of experience that I was doing, and it's leading me maybe in like, maybe feels like my work is not finished or complete with her, but like, there's it's time to like start to invite a different energy, and the way that I'm choosing to do that is to ask Oshun to introduce me.
So your next guide.
To the next to the next energy. So and that's been that's unfolding. So that's been interesting in the way that happens. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I'm curious to know, are there any images of these deities, or is it just kind of more knowing about them and what they stand for and everything, as opposed to any sort of images that are created, or do people maybe make up their own images?
So people have depicted representations of them. You have this is gonna bug me, but Ashoba, I'm not gonna say it right, so I'm not even gonna say it. Where the river, where Oshun, the source of Oshun is said to be, there's a river in Nigeria. And there's shrine there that it's actually a protected site. I think UNESCO protected site, and that's where people go to do, from all over the world. Practitioners of Ifa will go there to do the river ritual. So there are like places in nature as well. And if you Google Oshun, there'll be many paintings, pictures that people have created to depict them. And likewise for all of the Orisha, Ogun, and I think who else? The tricks that they call him the trickster, Eshu Legba, but it's more than that. It's more than that. But so if you Google, you will find things. There may be something that you're drawn to, something that helps like unfold some of the meaning or the feeling, the essence of the Orisha. And as I said, you can sing. There are Oriki that you can sing for the Orisha as a way to connect as well. And that's one of my practices.
Yeah, fabulous. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next question. Let's just see. Again, we have talked a little bit about nature and the elements in such a beautiful way, and that oneness, and having spirit in all the elements and everything containing spirit, containing energy. But just wondering how you incorporate the sort of nature elements into your own somatic practices, and then obviously your women's circles as well.
Well, I just think, it's infused now into my understanding of space holding and being with people as well. So there's that to say, that the somatic practices that I hold is very much about feeling into the invisible, the non-verbal, the things that like the resonance. So that's there. That's how
Yeah.
and I can even feel now, I just kind of dropped in a little bit to that. And in the circles or practices that I do with people, I tend to pour libation.
Okay.
I name and presence the ancestors, as I did earlier. And I would also name the directions, also the elements. So, east, south, west and north, above and below. There's the from hermetic, the tablet, I forget what it's called now, but the as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so my soul, is that reflection piece, the invisible meeting the visible, what exists above, exists below, that everything is in relation, but it's not just what we see, it's beyond that. So just bringing that into presence, to presence that in the space, to presence the elements, the air, the fire, the water, the earth, to presence the orientation of the directions, the direction of the rising sun, of the heat of the midday sun, of the setting sun, of the moon in all her forms, like bringing in to the space and forming a container with that, a spirit container, container to hold the spirit that would.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Very, again, a lot of synergies with other practices, shamanic practices, Celtic practices. It's just very interesting. Yeah. And it makes sense because all the other continents are covered. So it makes sense that.
Right. Why would Africa be the one that isn't? That
isn't doing that and has that sort of practice and depth to the practice. Yeah, it makes sense. And probably where it originated from and moved out, dispersed out. So interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Jae. So do you have any advice if anyone is watching this, if not live now, but later when they're watching it on YouTube, what advice would you give them if they're looking to reconnect with their ancestry, with the spiritual practices that we've been talking about today? Where do they start? Where do they go?
Begin with curiosity. If you have any practices already, invite African spirituality through that practice. Like I said with Oshun introducing me, the spirit is spirit. So sensing into what you might be called to is a place to start. To listening to your own intuition and curiosities is I would say a good place to start. And if you don't have practices, then I'd invite you to start to build a relationship with spirit. Through nature. What do you like doing? Do you like listening to music? Do you like walking in nature? Do you like swimming? Do you like moving your body, dancing? Like, what are the ways in which you can notice spirit or an element, the water, is maybe you're called to, like initially I was called to water. Being by the ocean or being by a river is always just feels so
Yeah.
calming, so awe-inspiring for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I followed that, you know. Do, do you like climbing mountains, or yeah, or sitting by a tree, or so follow, be curious about what you're drawn to. um, Try and get out of your head about rationalizing or thinking about it, and an invitation to drop into feeling and sensing. And that can be really challenging for people because we're not taught to do that, although we all have the capacity or the capability of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, maybe another way to say it is, what does your heart tell you? Where is your heart called?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if there's nothing, if you don't feel anything, sit with that. That as well. Get curious about that. Why am I? What's that?
Mm-hmm.
There's countless books, but I really think that experiential practice is the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like in it, but you can get direction from books. I always signpost African ancestral voices.
Put them up
Uh,
now.
yeah, they're like my go-to. Uh, Dalian and Verona have been doing this work for years.
Yeah.
Really through passion, through knowing the importance of people having access to these practices as a way of empowerment, as a move towards freedom and
Mm-hmm.
liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have documentaries where they have traveled around the world speaking to various different
Oh,
spiritual
wonderful.
leaders in some of the traditions, the lineages that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
They regularly have interviews with people or conversations with practitioners on YouTube. They have a book. I've got it here. I'm really selling them. I'm not selling them. There are like ways in. I Ancestral Voices for me was like a real portal into
Yeah, sounds like it.
like a way of furthering my journey.
Mm.
So yeah, I generally like give that as a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have courses as well, like introduction to. So if you want to be kind of guided and
Mm-hmm.
held as well, they have a course, Introduction to African Spirituality as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I would say. And then also I might run a workshop next year. So there's that too. So stay tuned. I
I'll
might
look
do
out for that. Mm-hmm.
um, Malidoma and Sobonfu Some, any books that they've written, really good touch point. I don't think we have time for me to go into who they are. They've passed, so they're in the ancestral realm, but did a lot of work of bringing their traditions of the Dagara people to the Western world. They did a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Aladom Some, a lot of grief work, because he identified that that's like one of the core missing things in the Western world, that people
Absolutely.
don't have space to grieve, and there's so
Mm-hmm.
much to grieve.
Yeah.
So yeah, Malidoma Some and Sobonfu Some. Yeah, and yeah, I think I'll leave it there. That those are some initial signposts,
Yeah.
and there's so many different practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
people, but you will find, I will say that you'll find them on Ancestral Voices. That's why I won't go. That's like the point where you might explore more practices from there.
Sounds like a fabulous resource. I'll have to also have a good look at it, because I only discovered it today, literally a few hours ago when you told me.
Yeah, when I said
I'm going to be looking at that as well. And I guess if anyone does still have their parents around, then they can also have conversations with them about their grandparents, great-grandparents, their childhood. That starts to maybe, I imagine anyway, that would start to connect you to your ancestors in another way, and various traditions and things that they did.
Sometimes I would say sometimes that can be a bit tricky, because there has been this shaming of traditions. There might be reluctance to speak about it, or they might not know because it's been hidden, or so I just want to, yes, that is one way, but also just want to also name that sometimes bring up some stuff. So
that's very true.
Yeah.
And sometimes our parents don't know why they do what they do.
They
say, why did you pour this here? Why do you make it? They don't always know. So but the ancestral voices sounds like a really valuable resource.
A great way. And you can, you become a detective. You start linking pieces together. You might get a little bit from family, then you might read something about the place you're from. You might then see, oh, that's practiced at carnival, for example, right? That's oh, that goes back to I don't know, Senegal, so you become a little, if you get curious, you can start to piece things together. And of course there's DNA testing. I haven't done that. I haven't done that either.
I know a few people do it. Yeah. Fabulous. It's amazing. Jae, this has been a really wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. As I said, I didn't really know anything but the negative things. And so it's really nice to have that enlightened introduction to it, understand that it also resonates with every other Indigenous spiritual practice that many people are kind of connected to. The oneness, the elements, nature, everything being spirituality, and then just having that diligence of practice to connect. And we might call it our inner voice, but really probably what it is our ancestors. We call it our guides, but they're there to kind of be with us and guide us as well. So definitely has piqued my curiosity even more, and I would have a look just to see what else is there to be explored, and maybe to read some books. But it's been an incredible conversation. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad you were curious, and you overcame that little not sure, and asked, and it's been good to share.
And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that I adore you, so I trust you, and I know that you wouldn't be into anything that isn't going to be fortifying and loving. And if I think about other people, some of my students practice African spirituality, and again, they're beautiful souls. So it made sense that this was a nice doorway in to kind of find out more about it, and trust that sense that this must be something that I should be aware of. So it's just lovely to sort of understand. I want to understand, and I feel I have understood tonight. So it's been fabulous. Thank you, Jae. If anyone has any further questions, thank you, Mel. Let me just pick up. Lovely. So, we've got Nikki as well. So Nikki's saying thank you for the shared wisdom. Thank you, Nikki, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Mel, for being our biggest supporter tonight.
Yes. We didn't get to Mel's question, but I think I maybe roundabout answered
the Ethiopian.
But I feel like I would. There's things travel. I'm just going to say that things travel. When they travel, the meaning might change with that. And I also talked about decontextualizing and also, I don't know enough about Christian Ethiopian religion to really speak on it in any real depth. So I think that's, that's what I will say. But there is, I mean, Rastafarianism is fundamentally, that is the Neba. My brain's really not working. I really normally have these words in my head, but there is the Ethiopian Bible. I believe it's the Bible, and the Rastafarianism religion. That's where it takes its teachings from and its wisdom from. So I'll just say that.
But thank you so much, Mel, for being with us as well. Mel is sort of saying that she studied Reiki, so thank you for bringing me back to the practice and way of being and healing. You're welcome, Mel. I mean, that leads us nicely into what we're going to be talking about next time we come on. Maybe next month, but because we've got Christmas, there's a lot sort of coming up next month, but we're hoping to kind of join again next month. And this time the tables will be turned. Just as I didn't know much about African spirituality until, you know, till this night with you. I've discovered it with you, which has been amazing. Jae is also really curious about Reiki, doesn't know too much about Reiki. And so we're going to use this platform as well to Jae this time to give me some questions and I'll answer them as best that I can. But already there's so many synergies in what we've been speaking about tonight. So I'm really looking forward to that. So do look out for that, guys. Join us for that. Please also like and subscribe. So yeah, definitely if you're interested in more conversations like this, as well as obviously on this channel, I share quite a bit about Reiki. There's Reiki meditations, information about Reiki, and of course the law of attraction, which is something which I'm also passionate about. So do kind of check that out on the channel. Jae, do you want to share how people can access you if they want to kind of find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. My website is Our Living Tree. .co.uk. And and you can find me on Instagram at our_living_tree.
Wonderful. I've put those links in the description, guys, so you're welcome to just click away and go straight to Jae from there. And any comments, I'll pass them back to Jae as well. But it's been really, as I said, a wonderful, enlightening evening. Sometimes we make some really quick judgments about things, as I said, based on hardly anything. So it's nice to kind of have some deeper insights into African spirituality tonight. So thank you so much for joining me, Jae. Thank you, everybody out there in YouTube land, for joining me. And thank you to Mel and Nikki for comments and questions. And we both look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next month, but watch out for the date. Yes. Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye. Bye.